We're live. Yes, yes, yes. Hey, welcome to this hangout. I am so excited about this one. Another one with Greg Kuhn. He's the author of Grow a Greater You. Actually, he's the author of a ton of books, and most of them start out with the title, Why Quantum Physicists, Why Quantum Physicists Play Grow a Greater You, Why Quantum Physicists Don't Get Fat, Why They Don't Suffer, Why They Create More Abundance, How Quantum Physicists Build New Beliefs. So a ton of books, and ones that we absolutely love and devour on our morning mindset call. We study, we read, we discuss, and we're in the midst of playing Grow a Greater You. So I thought it was a great time. We're near the end of the book, and I thought it was a great time to get back with Greg, just get a booster shot to keep us going. And man, I'm so excited, Greg, that you had time to be here today, right now. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. What an honor. What a treat. It's so much fun to see your smiling face and have an opportunity to chat with you again. Thanks.
Yeah. So first, what I really want to know, I want some updates from you. I know you're writing a new book, and I would like to know what's going on with that, what's going on with life, what's going on with happiness and joy about life.
Well, those are great questions, right? And they do tie into what you shared with me regarding this call in terms of, do we need to suffer or have tragedy before we take action? And uh, actually describing what's going on with me, that's a good segue into the call's topic. And because there's not a
Yep.
lot of suffering going on, there's not a lot of tragedy going on. And so, how to keep moving forward, and why do we keep moving forward when things are going well and are not painful? And I will tell you that the book that I'm actually getting some I'm having some professional hands and eyes and ears put on it right now, because it are really it's such it's been such an amazing delivery process, if you will. I accidentally unleashed a monstrous amount of leadership in myself, if you will, and have found myself now, my time is really being sought in some ways that are professionally rewarding, and I certainly am very grateful for that. The book is going to share what I believe is a even more of a mother lode of just gold. And you know what? Just like everything else, I'm sure you found this. In fact, I'd like to ask you your experience with this. Uh, Although it 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 does read more profoundly when I go back and look at my new book, it's also much simpler, much more basic, if you will, much more user friendly. Have you found that in your journey, that some things tend to get simpler as you go along?
Absolutely. I think it's because the more time you spend, like you say, it takes practice and persistence and patience, and the more you commit yourself to that, it gets easier. If you have that commitment that I'm going to do this, I'm going to go through this process, I'm going to play the game, continue, you know, I tell the people on our call, I say, this is not, we're going to read the book and you're done. This is a lifetime process, and you will do it over and over and over again. So with that, with practicing and having the patience and being gentle on yourself and yet being expectant, yes, it does get easier. Absolutely.
You're one of the things that I really um, well, one of the joyful byproducts of this last year has been, I've learned so much about listening, and it does slow down, if you will, the writing a bit, to be so enamored with listening. That continues to grow, and I don't mind the more measured pace because it's producing things that I so far in my experience have been even more immensely valuable than things in the past. So very very much looking forward to it being in everyone's hands, and just want to make sure that it is the baby that I intended to deliver, if you will.
Yes. Yeah. You're just going through the labor now. Oh boy.
It might the delivery process might have begun a week ago, but I don't know. I've thought that a couple times. It's not that far away. I'll I'll
Oh
say that.
man.
It doesn't feel like it anyway.
Well, congratulations on that whole journey there that you've
Thank you.
done. And
What's been going on with you? Tell me some things. I know you are on the road, or that has been your habitat for quite a while. So, how are things for you?
that's our lifestyle. We live in our pickup camper. We live and travel. We full time. We have
Hmm.
no home base other than our where the wheels are. Wherever we're parked, that's home. And the one thing that I really wanted to talk to you about concerns that. Um, we've had ups and downs. I know other people just would not relate to that at all. That, that it's a roller
Right.
coaster. I know that I'm the only one. I'm pretty
Of
sure of it.
course. Of course.
So things go really, really, really good, and then you get the rug pulled out from under you. And always in the past when that has happened, we have just kind of proudly said, "Oh, we're just writing our story. This is going to
Hmm.
be awesome when we tell it from the stage." And it wasn't until recently that it just brought me up short that, well, wait a minute. Am I, well, yeah, I know I am I creating more of the same by buying into that belief that if your story isn't sensational, if you don't go through enough pain and suffering and struggle, you're not going to see success. And and then I listen to leaders, I listen to speakers. In fact, we're reading your story this week on our call, and it's quite a story. I mean, it is
Yeah.
from going bad to worse to just the depths of hell, and then you have your victory. And most of the time, the majority of the time, I don't even know the percentage, I'd say it's 98% of the time, when people get up to lead, to share, to help others, they tell that hero's journey, that
Hmm.
story. And so I realize that belief has been ingrained in me, and I'm sure in many others, that unless you go through the struggle, unless you make it sensational, you're not going to get the success. And it's been a it's been a lot to think about because I didn't realize how deeply that was ingrained in me,
Mm.
and I'm sure many others can identify with that. Okay, oh boy, this is going to be awesome when we're on stage or when we're on a hangout or when we're doing a presentation to tell how bad it was.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to pick your brain on that because I just feel like it's front and center right now, especially for me.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the question. I don't focus a lot on what got me in a position to open my mind and seek solutions that were different than those that I had always, you know, tried. And part of that is because I really don't want to encourage people. I don't want to encourage myself to focus on outcomes. I will tell you, Trisha, that uh, one of the things that's front and center in this book is the difference between circumstances and experiences. And I know I've been hung up on circumstances for much of my life. And if I asked myself or if I asked anyone else a very basic question to distinguish between circumstances and experiences, I'd ask it like this. Uh, would you rather feel abundant love and joy, dis- even though the circumstances in your life are not what you imagined would provide that to you? For example, would you rather feel abundant love and joy although you lived alone? Or would you rather be married and have 5 children and you all live together and feel lonely? I think most of us, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think it's a pretty obvious response. Nobody's going to choose response B. Although many of us have clung to response B in the past because we just couldn't imagine having the experiences we desired without the circumstances we simply knew needed to accompany it. And I will tell you that many of my greatest experiences, uh, my most desired and treasured experiences, have come about in, you know, surrounded by circumstances that I never would have guessed would have accompanied them. And I'm sure we can all relate. We've all had that experience of saying, wow, I sure am glad that that didn't happen like I wanted it to. Or we've all had the experience of looking back and saying, what I thought was the worst possible outcome turned out to be the exactly what I needed and the greatest blessing. And it's easy to say that for me in retrospect. Developing the capacity to appreciate the struggle, if you will, or the climb, I think that's an art form. And I do believe that there are some answers for us that we can take away and begin to use now so that we don't have to feel stagnant when we're not suffering greatly or when we're not moving out of great suffering. Have you, Trisha, in your life, I don't want to be too personal or put you on the spot, but have you had a period of suffering that preceded some of your journey?
Absolutely. Yeah,
It,
absolutely. It's always there. And I mean, we want life to be smooth sailing.
mhm.
We definitely want that. Wouldn't that be nice? But that's not how life is. Things come up, things that are not really in your control that maybe other people cause even. And so, but what I have found that sometimes we don't see the big picture, of what's really going on, and focusing on what's happening in this moment, how bad it is, you know, um, takes away a little bit of the vision of maybe this, there's something here to learn,
Wow.
uh, or further on down the road, you can see a little bit more how the universe connected the dots at that time when you had no idea. We think we know. We think we
Right.
know how things are supposed to work, how this should happen. We think that, we play, this, I know God, I know universe, that you're the all in all. I believe, I know that, but this, I want this to happen, and I'm pretty sure it's going to come from this person or this, project or this experience or whatever. And so we get in the way is what happens. Uh, that and that's hard. It's a hard lesson to live the way. And as you said, let go of the outcome. Quit focusing on the outcome. I think that's probably the most golden nugget right now. Let go of the outcome.
Mhm.
That's so hard to do. That is so hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. When we stay focused on requiring specific circumstances, uh, that's painful. And I do want to differentiate. My experience has been that there is a difference between pain and suffering. Uh, the times I really don't suffer or haven't suffered by my definition of suffering in quite a while. I have experienced quite a bit of pain. A couple years ago, I said goodbye to my son as he went, oldest son, as he went off to college. It was incredibly painful. Uh, that's but one example. And when I was sharing a moment of grief with my youngest son, and we were both crying, and I said, uh, Logan, imagine this is the best possible outcome, perhaps, with a child. Imagine families that don't get to share this. And I want to say, Trisha, that when I shared that with him, I didn't I wasn't doing it to stuff the sadness and the grieving. Uh, for me, my greatest suffering has always uh, arisen out of times when I refuse to acknowledge the pain, when I refuse to acknowledge the discomfort of daily living. And I do believe very strongly that uh, one of the easiest things for us to do, seemingly, is to know what we don't want. And if you said to me, well, Greg, you know, what do you not want in a relationship? Well, I don't want to be lonely. I don't want to feel as if I'm on my own. And then you say, okay, well, that's great, Greg. Well, what is it that you want? Well, then I start to struggle a bit sometimes. Is it okay for me to want what I want? Is it okay for me to want what I want, what I want, and so on and so forth? What exactly do I want? Well, I want these things. Well, wait a minute. Maybe I want those things. Well, I can't have it all, or maybe I can, and it gets a little confusing. It's so much easier for us, at least for me, to zero in on what I don't like and what I don't want, and you know, to define myself and define my progress by pain and failure, if you will, to use a terminology, uh, that's that's fairly common, and I hope nobody would beat herself up for having that frame of reference. I do have a suggestion to help us move past that, but at the same time, we know that pain uh, created by either mistakes or a lack of awareness or a lack of understanding, uh, or some mixture of those things. Pain is a pretty important tool. It's a great teacher. It's feedback, if you will, from the universe. When I allow myself to feel how I feel and have emotional honesty, the universe becomes my individual tutor. It speaks to me and says, wow, this is painful, Greg. This belief is painful. This perspective is painful. Some of that pain I'm willing to endure and even invite. The pain of making myself vulnerable to another human being, the pain of loving someone, the pain of investing myself in things that I believe are worthy of my investment. Well, that's inviting pain, isn't it? When we make pain our enemy, it can inhibit that type of investment. It can inhibit that type of joy that, of course, is the other side of the coin, and we can deprive ourselves, all in the name of safety and reliability and predictability. I've often found, Trisha, and I want to ask you if you've experienced anything like this. When I'm not emotionally honest with myself, it affects every part of my life. I've never been able to successfully compartmentalize emotional dishonesty. Emotional dishonesty, which may have been born of a positive intent. Maybe I want to be positive, or I don't want to let this bother me, or I want to remember that there is a bigger picture. And that's so true what you said. There is a larger perspective. Driving home, listening to NPR, the commentator asked the question, because a global warming conference or video event was canceled today, and he posed the question, which is going to be more important in 100 years, global warming or terrorism? And my first thought was this: it's not 100 years from now, it's right now. And I can't put myself into 100 years from now. Well, I may, I feel pain today, and I know that in a month, I'll look back and the things that are causing me pain will be resolved, or at the very least, they'll now be put in a different perspective. But it's not a month from now, it's right now. And what I've found is most important is to acknowledge the fact that I'm in discomfort or pain, emotional pain especially, and to let myself be there, because that's a part of the learning experience. It would be for us to not, when we don't acknowledge our pain, when we don't allow that to be, our feedback. It'd be like you and I enrolled in a algebra class, and when we're being assessed, uh, any answers that we got wrong, well, I'm just going to take a pair of scissors and cut that question out of the test and throw it away and say I got 100.
Yeah.
You know what? As long as I'm in my own little world, I did make 100. But I don't want that type of assessment. I don't want that type of feedback, because I don't live in my own little world that only I create. That's not the type of life I want. So pain is a part of the feedback that the universe gives us. We all know that it directs us. It teaches us what we don't want. It teaches us what's not working. And you know what? Invariably, as you know, as your friends know, at the end of the day, whatever it is that's not functioning in a manner that brings us pleasure, the buck stops here. It's always about us. And well, Henry David Thoreau, I think, probably said it best: things don't change, we change.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Have you noticed that? What I spoke to. Have you found that uh, emotional dishonesty often permeates and creates unintended problems? What sort of victories and setbacks have you found with that?
When what comes to mind is the emotional dishonesty that we've been so accustomed to just always living that way, especially those immersed in personal development, especially students of the law of attraction. We're taught to always put on the happy face
Mm-hmm.
and to never let a negative thought come into your mind. And if it does, dismiss it and change it up real quick. And so the freedom that what you have taught in this book, the freedom that gives is massive. That it's okay to feel the pain. It's okay to cry, because you're human and you have these emotions. Many times in my life, I mean, I so resonate with what you said about your son going off to college. I remember that when the firstborn went off to college, it was like a death in the family.
Mm-hmm.
It was grief. There was crying for days. I mean, it was just like there was this empty space. Now the second one, not so much, but it was that first one. You had to get through that. Experiences that I've had when my mom died unexpectedly. That was before I really started on this path to growing into a greater person, to understanding how all that I think and all that I feel creates my reality. But the pain was very real, and I couldn't shake it. Most recently, I have a daughter who's a heroin addict, and been that way for 10 years, in and out of prison, in and out of treatment. That is a very painful thing for a mom. And there was a period this summer where I didn't know where my daughter was.
Mm-hmm.
And there's fear there, and worry, and the pain. The pain doesn't go away because you hurt for your children. Any parent here would know that you want the best for your child. But what I had to come to terms with was I can't change her. Although I've tried. Believe me, I've really tried. But what I had to come to terms with was just constantly holding her in a space of love and forgiveness, and seeing her that way instead of seeing her in the light of a drug addict who continues to mess up. Knowing that the energy, the thoughts, all of that communally creates what she's experiencing. And so it's taken some work to do that. But I've been okay with crying when I'm sad about what's going on with her. I've been okay with that, but I'm not letting it, I'm not giving into that, so to speak. And I think that's what a lot of people do when things go wrong in life. They just spiral down. And, well, this is how life is, and it's so bad. No, you know, from all that I've experienced, all the ups and downs, this isn't the end. And this isn't the worst that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think you shared that in a recent blog post, what's the best that can happen?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of focusing on what's the worst,
Mm-hmm.
focus on the best. And so it's been quite a journey over this summer with my daughter. Yeah, it's been quite a journey. So more to come, but I'm okay with what happens. And I know that I'll just, continue to hold her as I do in love. Those are my prayers. I love you. I love you.
I appreciate you sharing that, and I hear in your voice, and I see in your eyes that it's not about slapping on a smiley face, is it? It's
no.
I had the honor of a friend of a friend requested to sit down with me, a woman by the name of Susan, who is really going through some scary stuff, and there's some legal issues, what have you, and perhaps quite a bit of money at stake for her. And she said, and she's a very much a spiritual seeker, and perhaps would characterize herself as a law of attraction person. And she said, Greg, I just can't figure out a way to feel positive about this. And that's my first response was, why would you? Why would you feel positive about this? In fact, trying to feel positive about it is going to keep it around as an experience for much longer than it needs to be there. Feeling safe and secure and okay and abundant or cared for or anything in between is not a byproduct of having things exactly the way we want them to be. I had a beautiful opportunity this past weekend. Got together with a friend of mine who published a book, and it had a book reading, and I got a chance to spend some time with a woman named Donna, who she lost her young son and husband in a fire, and we really got to spend some time together. She poured out her soul to me. I felt just blessed to have her open up and share. And that's one of the very first things she said is she floundered and almost went under for quite a while because she didn't think that she should feel as sad as she did and as angry as she did. And it wasn't until she allowed herself to really go there and not mask it and not be in denial and not put on a smile, because she really wanted to make other people feel more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she made the comment to me that now that she is thriving, which, by the way, under those circumstances, means that she feels sad, that she misses them, and there's still pain there. She said, it takes a really strong person to be friends with me because of what they have to deal with. And I said, it takes an even stronger person to walk through it than to be friends with you. And for those of us that are asked to give the most or to walk through the most, we're usually afforded the benefit of the ease that comes along with that. Hey, I think something fell over on your end.
I got it. My phone's acting weird, but I got it. Keep going. Pay no attention.
Yeah. So, I want to say one of the I want to pose this question to you and to everyone, because I really believe that the pain that we feel uh, can we can form a perspective on it that that can come out of maybe it's an odd question here. Uh, we're all familiar with the concept of having questions that need answers, right? Uh, oftentimes, in fact, when I'm in pain, that's exactly what's going on. I have questions and I need to find the answers to them. Uh, well, I don't think anybody would doubt the truth or the veracity of that statement, that there are questions that need answers. So if that's true, then the opposite side of the coin, or the flip side, must also be true, and I believe it is very true. I believe that there are answers that need questions, and all around us is truth. It's really in our ears, our eyes, our nose, our face, it permeates all of life. It comes in so many forms, and it's available, it's abundant, it's free, it will never run out. The answers are everywhere. However, doesn't it seem that we don't see those answers? We don't perceive those answers until we have questions. And it's one thing for us to record this, hang out and to provide some answers, or at least provide some direction toward answers, if nothing else. But if someone doesn't have questions, the answers might not be of that much value. So I'd like to suggest that the pain, the stubbed toes, or perhaps the even greater or more egregious tragedies, those are the things that gift us with questions. And in my experience, and Trisha, I'll ask you if you found likewise, I've never encountered a time where I had questions and I didn't find answers. Most of my life where I've struggled, there have been the times that I didn't have any questions. Does that sound like a reasonable synopsis, or does that ring true at all?
It does ring true. One of my favorite questions is, how can I?
Mm-hmm.
And this is just kind of a silly story now, but it's an experience. I learned that. How can I? Instead of, why me? Or if I can't, whatever's going wrong, you can't find your keys, you can't, whatever. It could be as simple as that. But I've learned to ask that question, because I do feel like when you ask a question, it opens up the connection to the universe to deliver the answer, because the answer's there.
Mm-hmm.
We were traveling to California and our truck overheated, and we got stuck on the side of a mountain for hours. Intermittent internet. We called our towing service, our roadside assistance service, and they couldn't locate us with their GPS. Well, of course, I hadn't been paying attention to where we really were. I was enjoying the scenery, so that, well, where are you? I go, I don't know. We're in the middle of the mountains. That's all I can tell you. And it was a little scary and a little frustrating. But then the solution came, and they suggested we call 911 and get our location. Perfect, Well, that part of the problem was solved. They knew where we were, but they couldn't find a tow truck driver that wanted to come up there and get us in the middle of the night now. And so It was back and forth communications with him. I can't find anybody. I can't find anybody. I can't find anybody. It was getting cold. It was dark. And I finally just said, how can we get towed before midnight? Less than a minute. I mean, it was just a matter of seconds that we got a text message from the roadside assistant that said, your tow truck driver will be there at 9:30. And I'm going, and I've used that. That's one of the most profound examples of that it really does work, but I've used it so many times. And I share that with a lot of people, that asking the questions that maybe you don't feel like you dare ask even, but
Mm-hmm.
how can I? And it does open up. The answers come. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to add to that, uh, the very simple. Actually, you mentioned there are there are four things, or four, four
Yeah.
things that are front and center in the new book. Uh, you just spoke to one of them, and that is listening to learn and expressing to learn. Uh, instead of listening and expressing to make something or create something or fabricate something or convince the universe, I think we may have mentioned when you emailed me about this hangout, how many times in my life have I eh, intentionally or inadvertently been trying to deserve myself, deserve this experience, certainly deserve the experiences that I desire more than the ones that I'm having. There's an inherent eyeball logic to this idea that we only get what we earn and we get what we deserve. And yet we invariably may see people who we don't assess as deserving. And then we start to, and I think it's a pretty common experience for us to create stories about how certain types of experiences obviously can only be crafted through, devious or unscrupulous means. And I I can understand that. And I can't say that I am completely devoid of those types of prejudices myself. I'd like to think I am, but I will say this. When I listen to learn instead of listen to prove that my perspective is viable, it boggles my mind sometimes when I watch people that I'm close to argue for their own limitations. Yet I know that I do that too.
Mm-hmm.
Someone gives me feedback and I'm listening, and instead of learning, because I don't believe there's such a thing as a false perception. I have an idea of what I'm expressing and what I'm conveying, and what you're perceiving, if it's different than what my idea is, well, that's something I should pay attention to. And I can explain it away. I can say, well, Trish has red hair, and all red-haired people, they hear things the wrong way, and what have you. Well, yeah, I can do that. I don't find much value in that, and I do it quite often. And then there's also expressing to learn. As I'm sharing and paying attention to the responses to it, uh, of course, the two are expressing and listening are pretty intricately tied together. Expressing to learn means that I share and then I express and then I pay attention to the perception or the reception or the feedback, because that's going to clue me into what I'm really expressing, instead of what I think I'm expressing. Well, both of those feedback loops are invaluable. So is emotional honesty. That's the third thing. So there's listening to learn, expressing to learn, emotional honesty, and we've touched on that. I wrote a blog post recently about sitting in. I go to a Science of Mind church. It's the Science of Mind is it's a wonderful uh, practice, not one that I've studied a whole lot, so I'm not endorsing that per se, but certainly have never heard anything uh, that I was in any sort of disagreement with there, and I really enjoy the community. And I was asked to give a talk there, and I went the Sunday before because I'm almost always inspired when I'm there. And I went in, so I went, sat down. I said, well, this is the perfect place to get inspiration for my talk. I sat down and I was ready, and I didn't like what I heard. And there was a comment from one of my fellow audience members, and there were some the message that was shared. I didn't appreciate the all that much, and I started getting angry. And for a moment, I said, no, I can't be angry. This is a spiritual place. I'm a spiritual person. I'm above this. I'm better than this. And then I said, wait a minute. No, emotional honesty. I do feel angry. That is how I feel. That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong happening here. It doesn't mean that I'm better than anyone or that I know better or that I have the right answers and no one else does. It just means that that's how I feel right now. And when I allowed myself to feel that, I began to, as you said, allowed myself to question, why is it that I feel angry? Well, I feel angry because someone had made a comment about, thoughts drive our feelings. And I think feelings, I don't know if you've often found this, a lot of people, like you mentioned, the smiley faces and the positivity, feelings get cast in the role of being the source of our experiences rather than the feedback loop for whether our beliefs are aligned with our desires. And as I began to say, well, why is it that I'm angry? Well, it's because I heard this comment, and it's because I didn't hear that addressed when it came up, and all of a sudden it dawned on me, wait a minute, I know what my talk is. My talk is about why it's important to feel mad when I'm mad, and why it's important to feel sad when I'm sad. As much as I might not always appreciate that feeling, and there you go, right there, just like you said, the answer waiting right there for me. The inspiration that I came for was right there. All I had to do was be emotionally honest, listen to learn, and express to learn. And then the fourth part is something that we're all familiar with, and that is, focusing on aligning our beliefs. Raising our beliefs into alignment intentionally. And all four of those things that I just shared, that I write about in the book, we're already doing them when we play Grow a Greater You. I believe that people who play Grow a Greater You will merely find that framing it in that way might be even simpler, might be even more simple to follow, and to frame our life on a day-to-day basis. I will say this: one of the things that has really changed my life, and I think this is one of the keys to appreciating pain, and at the same time not building pain into some sort of a necessary, noble experience, if you will, and that is a concept called formative assessment. Our eyeballs really ask us to put a lot of stock in something called a summative assessment. And a summative assessment, I heard it explained like this: when a chef is preparing the soup, and she takes a taste while it's being prepared, that's a formative assessment. When the soup gets served to the customer and the customer tastes it, that's a summative assessment. And life, our experiences, these are formative assessments. There is no summative assessment. A marriage, a job, an income, a vehicle, friends, a home, uh, anything that we can think of, all the things that we envision creating the experiences that we covet. None of these things are summative assessments. There are no goal lines. There are no finish lines that we cross and say we did it, we've arrived. And that allegiance to summative assessment leads us to a lot of pain, because most of the time, even with some of my greatest successes, when I assess, my assessment is often, well, not yet. Even when it's very pleasurable, still not yet. Still, I know inherently more is possible. More is always possible. More joy, more love, more abundance, more freedom, more security, more safety, more connection, more intimacy, uh, more serenity. Often I asked somebody the other day, well, let me pose it to you like this. What would you think, Trisha, if I told you that uh, the United States government has asked us all to stop using or speaking the number 5 because it's about to run out? It's been used too many times. I mean, how silly is that,
It
right?
is.
You can't. There's no. I mean, what a ridiculous notion. I can say 5, every second for the next 40 years. It doesn't affect the supply of 5, right? There's always more 5. Well, yet we seem to harbor this illusion that there's a limitation on other energies, other ideas, other concepts. And we know this logically. But putting it in that frame of reference to say, we have a lot of constructs. They're created, they're adopted. We immerse ourselves in them and we accept them. And as you mentioned at the beginning of the call, pain as the precursor to joy. Sure, that's a construct that we have accepted. It does make sense. Pain and suffering certainly illuminates mistakes, errors, misunderstandings, misconceptions that we hold. Certainly illuminates directions that we've been heading, that we'd like to, alter into a path that's more amenable to, the experiences we desire. At the same time, if we can practice formatively assessing ourselves so that when things are going badly, we acknowledge that they're displeasing. And we also acknowledge that, well, we're not there yet.
Yep.
Not yet. And flip the coin over. When things are going well, we acknowledge how pleasing they are, and we also formatively assess and say, not yet, not yet. Because this is a game. This is what we came here to do. We're blessed that we're able to experience. That is the definition of a human being. If we read now in a very interesting new branch of science called the science of self, is telling us very, very clearly. Neurologists, neurobiologists, they're telling us that humanity, being this, is a direct result of the capacity to experience. The capacity to experience, the willingness to experience, the ability to experience. This is what we are. We are experiences. And the sources of that which makes us human, the sources of our experiences, well, there's a wide variety, and they culminate into these coals or nuggets that we, for lack of a better term, we call them beliefs, and they allow us to coalesce this energy into uh, what we call life on Earth as a human being. But we know, we're pretty sure, and I think this is a very, very reasonable assumption, although we can't say that definitively that this, it is the way it is, but we're pretty sure that this energy that we're assembling into this experience that we're having is but a perception, and it's governed by dimensional rules and boundaries and constructs that seem to be necessary to assist us. For whatever reason, they do seem to be necessary right now. It doesn't mean that we can't surpass them or practice surpassing them. That's what imagination is. That's what vision is. That's what dreams are. That's what hope is. Don't ever let anyone tell you that your imagination isn't real, that your dreams aren't real, that your hopes aren't real. Those things are just as real as any other experience that you have. And we don't want to live perhaps in our dreams and our hopes and our imaginations. The dreams that you have for your daughter are, I would bet, the very same dreams she has for herself. And the pain that you feel in that relationship, as I'm sure you know, is the discord, knowing that she's not able to be in that place right now, as much as you'd love her to be. Well, thank goodness we're in a place today that brings us joy and peace and comfort, and we can take some additional comfort in knowing that there probably are people who would look at our lives and take pity on us, and perhaps there are, perhaps there are entities that we are incapable of perceiving right now that look down upon these words we share and say, wow, they're just learning their ABCs, or, who knows?
Exactly.
Who knows? But I do feel that we prove the veracity of these statements. They're based on solid foundation. We prove them in our daily lives. There's nothing that I do that isn't based on the effectiveness of the practice. And because of formative assessment, I'm able to identify misconceptions and missteps and misunderstandings much quicker today than I used to, when all I did was assess my life summatively. Now that I do formative, I'm much I'm much quicker to pick up on the stumbling blocks, because they just don't fit in a life that's aimed toward productivity and joy and connection, and not a life that's free from pain, but a life that where I'm a more intentional director of my experiences, and that those experiences aren't dependent on certain circumstances being in place.
Yeah. It sounds like it sounds like Grow a Greater You Part 2, or whatever you're calling that,
Hmm. Hmm.
this next book. It sounds yeah, as a simpler concept that those that struggle with telling a better feeling story all the time.
Hmm.
You're bringing into this assumptive and this how we do that, how we live it. You're making it's going to be more clear. That's what I feel. The things that you've shared, you're just kind of going, wow, he's gonna make it clearer for us. That's what
Well,
I'm excited about.
that's the goal. And actually, and I don't mean to nitpick or pick on something you just said, but one of the motivators for me has been uh, uh, related to what you just shared. Telling the best feeling story, uh, or telling a better feeling story. Uh, so many times, I mean, it is so often I'm approached by people saying, "Hey, I can't figure out a way to tell a good feeling story," or "I can't," and once again, expressing to learn, right?
Mhm.
Uh, it's probably challenging for many of us to hear and see, although I've always tried to be very explicit that it's the best feeling possible story, and I've always when I write about that in that vernacular, I've always taken great care to say, hey, sometimes the best feeling possible story is this really sucks and I can't wait till it's over, but yet it is ingrained in us, isn't it? We've got to feel positive. We've got to get to the positive place. Well, yeah, because when we're feeling good, we know that there's a correlation with feeling good and desirable experiences. And so we just we tend to want to put the cart before the horse, to use an old analogy, and say, well, okay, I want the experience I desire. I want to have that. I know when I do, I'm going to feel the way I want to feel. So, well, I better get to feeling like I want to feel, and to get to that experience. And it's very understandable. And I can't say that I don't fall victim to it, or
Yeah.
if you will, today. I still do. I still want to say, no, I don't really feel sad about that, because I do understand the larger picture. And emotional honesty, I will tell you, it is. It's like having an oxygen mask, in a vacuum. I find that invariably, when I'm struggling, or when I'm being defensive, or when I'm being evasive, and those, often usually those practices lead to undesirable experiences. It almost always goes back to, I'm not being honest with myself about something. It's a discomfort, it's a fear, it's a pain, it's an inadequacy. I really have my whole life experienced a lack of willingness to feel feelings that suggest that I've been inadequate, or let people down, or not been enough. And you know what? Those types of feelings grow to monstrous proportions very quickly. They really do. And once I've invested that denial and that dishonesty, well, it becomes increasingly more important to keep that dishonesty alive, because the pain on the other side of it, uh, it feels like it's going to be King Kong
Yeah.
unleashed if I don't keep that barrier up. And as I'm sure we've all had experiences like this, when we finally, okay, I can't keep this in anymore, you know, and then well, we may have mentioned this on Hangouts before. One of my favorite self-help book of all time is a Sesame Street book called "There's a Monster at the End of This Book," and it stars Grover. In every single page, Grover tells you, do not turn the other
Turn the
page, because
page.
there's a monster at the end of this book, and he's begging and he's pleading and he's building walls and nailing boards and screaming at you, what are you doing? Aren't you listening to me? And then when you get to the end of the book, it's just Grover. And he says, oh, there's not a monster. It's just me.
Neat.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It is. I'd
It's
forgotten about that book. I love that.
it's
What a great
just
analogy.
it's just us. And not only is it just us, wow, it is us. This is what we are. There is a great illusion that we're all separate one from the other. I guess for whatever reason right now we just can't enjoy this experience without that illusion. So I'll go with it and say that you know it's nice to have opportunities like Google Hangouts and other digital connections to begin to chip away at that illusion as we see ourselves more and more connected. That for me has been a really beautiful transition.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow, Greg. I have one question that has come up in our discussion. It's been kind of a prevalent question as people have um, maybe finished going through the process once of playing Grow Greater You
Hmm.
and starting again. Why am I afraid to start again? Big,
Hmm.
big fear. Am I going to find the happiness that I think is going to come?
Hmm.
And we've talked about it, and I know that it's the fear of what if I fail? What if I fail at this now, this time?
Hmm.
Have you been asked that before? Is that something that comes up a lot? I
Yeah.
just want to make sure I brought that to you because I promised I would.
Yeah. Well, you know what? When I started last, it was early spring. I realized that the business that I desired had not manifested, and it, and I thought, well, you know what? Okay, I'm going to being honest with myself. I'm very grateful and appreciative. I love what I'm doing, yet I was expecting something else to be in place right now, and I don't understand why. Why isn't it in place? It certainly everything seems to be uh, everything that's necessary in my mind is here. Why hasn't somebody heard me talk or read my books and come in and said, "Hey, we're going to take you and make you into whatever it is." And I said, well, I know what to do with this. I'm going to go through the process. And the things that I shared, the four things that I shared, are the things that I learned in the process. Uh, and I did manifest my desire. Uh, this time, I am still manifesting my desire. I do uh, want to keep my formative assessment in place. But I will say this losing, and I know at times I have been an advocate for being specific about what we desire. And I certainly see the value in that because knowing what we desire is an important step. And if we've never given ourselves permission to desire and to feel okay about that, wow, that's a pretty important step to begin with. To know that we can allow good into our lives. So many of us have gotten comfortable with desiring.
Yeah.
Well, it's a transition to begin to experience because, and I know this is gonna might sound kind of goofy to say it this way, but in a sense, uh, I don't desire things that I'm already experiencing. Now, I'm not talking about a lack of gratitude. What I'm describing is the things that I'm experiencing. I don't typically sit around and say, "Wow, I really, wish I I had that." Um, you know, Having a BMW, I don't sit around and wish for a BMW. Having a loving spouse, I don't sit around and wish for a loving spouse. Having, though that concept, and it's very true. So the things that are absent, there's a comfort for us in saying someday, someday. And you even mentioned this, the suffering I'm doing right now is paving the way for that someday. And I'm paying my dues. I'm earning that payday. Uh, and that's certainly a noble concept. If that gets somebody through the day, who am I to say that you shouldn't feel that way or have that perspective? But this time through, I began to realize that every emotional perspective, as you well know, we write and live our way up the emotional chart, one emotional perspective at a time. It didn't take very long this time as I began to really listen to see that in the past I had put all my focus on the end, on reaching the top. and what awaited me at the top. It's understandable. I don't think anybody would say I was foolish for concentrating on that. Uh, what I saw this time was that the gift that I came for, what I truly had spent my entire life desiring, was waiting for me right there in that emotional perspective.
Mm.
And so what I would say to people is take the pressure off yourself. The gift isn't waiting for you at the top of the chart. The gift is waiting for you right now. And in the emotional perspective, wherever you are, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter where you start or where you are. So I will say as an aside, so often I hear people say, hey, I'm at the top of the chart and I'm still struggling. Well, without making fun, you're not at the top of the chart. If that's the feeling you're having about the desire. Now, I want to be intentional about this. I don't mean you've done something wrong. What I mean is how you feel about your desire is where you are on the chart.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not a homework assignment, right? You mentioned it. It's a lifestyle. And this time through, for the first time, and this is anyone doing this, or the next time through, or what have you, forget that there are any other emotions to come, and treat this perspective as a learning opportunity with a gift waiting for you to find. And it literally will be, it's the experience was the very same as looking at a tall ladder and seeing that there is a rung at the very top. Yet where I am, the rung stops. And the next emotional perspective is the next rung. And that rung will not be there until I am there. And when I am really there and allow myself to really be that as the end all be all, as the ultimate solution, as where I always wanted and needed to be, these gifts just materialize. Incredible gifts, learning opportunities, and it began to teach me along the way that the manifestation of my desire wasn't a circumstance. It wasn't a material object or a person or an accumulation of anything. Or what it was being the thing that I desire. And when I am that which I desire, everything reflects it. I'm not always that which I desire today, but everything every single material experience I have is transformed into a reflection of my beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we know that's true.
Yeah.
Yet, how many of us say, hey, wait a minute, I've done all this work, I've put in all this time, I've exerted all this effort, and yet I look around me and I don't experience abundance. Okay. That's okay. That's feedback. It's something to pay attention to. And what it's telling me is that I'm not in a place where I'm capable of having abundance reflected back to me by my surroundings. Because having abundance has nothing to do with the material surroundings. Experiencing abundance is all about having a state of being, having beliefs, who I am, having the capacity to transform everything around me into abundance. And that's the formative assessment. That's where I say, you know what? I'm not experiencing abundance. I don't see and perceive abundance today. That doesn't make me want to change my circumstances as I look around. That alerts me and helps me realize, oh, for whatever reason, I'm not capable in this moment of transforming the things around me into abundance. And that makes all the difference. If you anyone who's ever doubted, anyone who would ever doubt that, if you we hear stories all the time about millionaire athletes who go broke, or people who win the lottery and go bankrupt soon after. Abundance is a state of being, and it really is. Now, it might frustrate somebody who's in the middle of really dire circumstances. That doesn't mean that we're to blame when we don't feel and experience abundance. It doesn't mean we're to blame when we don't perceive abundance. What it means is not that we're to blame. It means, hey, you're being given feedback about your state of being and your beliefs. All you have to do is pay attention to it and be right where you are. When you can be right where you are, you can then take another step. And so, why do I not want to go back and go through the process again? You know what? All it takes is emotional honesty. And the cool part, if this motivates anybody to go to begin again, is there's a gift waiting right there for you in this emotional perspective. And it's got all the answers that you've always been looking for. It really does. So I heartily encourage people to be where they are. Don't place judgments, and affirmatively assess themselves. There's always not yet,
Not yet, yeah. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Man, Greg, you've given us a ton to just digest, to assimilate, to just sit with, a lot. And I know that people will listen to this over and over again, and that's a good thing, because the more times you listen, something else is going to come out to help you. I so appreciate you taking this time and digging in deep with me. I so appreciate that. You were saying that when you say not yet, there's one of the things that Bruce and I always say, in the moments of when things are good, we say it doesn't get any better than this until it does.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and that's just one of our favorite sayings, is that this is great, but there's more. And just like you have discovered that, your first go round with playing Grow a Greater You, when you developed the game and all, and getting out of debt and all, that was, was awesome. But then realizing this year that, hey, there's more.
There's more.
There's more. There's always more, and there's no limit to anyone. Absolutely no limit at all. It's your birthright to be abundant. It's your birthright to be happy and joyful, and have a life that you just live fully out loud and love. It's your birthright. So, man, I just thank you. Thank you for being here today, for giving us your time, and I look forward, eager anticipation.
Me too.
For the book.
Yeah.
And also for the next time that we get to do this again, because it is always such a blessing, and such just a precious time of connecting energies and sharing thoughts, and knowing that there are people that are taking this in, maybe for the first time, and kind of being shaken up a little bit, but starting out, hey, okay, I want to do more. I want to learn more about this. And so if that's what happens with even one person, then this has just been so worth it in every sense of the word.
Well, I know it's happened with 2 people, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you for that.
Thank you. All right. Well, of course, we'll stay in touch, and we'll do this again.
Looking forward to it.
And in the meantime, looking forward to all that you share. You guys, Greg's blog, if you're not on his blog, it's whyquantumphysicist.com. highly suggest that you get there and you get on his mailing list so that you receive all of his blog posts and you keep up with all that he shares. There's a wealth of information there. Everything that you want to read about what, you could spend weeks, maybe months, reading through the articles because there's so many good ones. And so I highly recommend that. whyquantumphysicist.com is where you can find Greg's blog. All right, we're going to wrap it up, Greg, and get on with the rest of the day. Thank you for being here. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Trisha.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.